Ta-da! We were going to have a jingle ready for Scott and Danielle's virtual chat, but we didn't get it ready. So here we are. We are live on Facebook. We're on 959theriver.com. I am Scott Mackay. As you can see, she is Danielle Tufano.
You know, if Jan, our traffic reporter, was here, he for sure would sing us a jingle. I know he would, but he's not.
Be jazzy beatbox, but yeah, that's good too. Yeah. So we are here today to talk to Kane County Sheriff Ron Hain and find out what's going on with some of the programs in Kane County and around, and really trying to do a lot of different stuff. There he is, Sheriff Hain. How are you, sir?
We had you on the air with us last week, and we talked a lot and learned a lot of interesting things about some of the programs that you guys are doing at the department there.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I should say us again. So, of course, there's somebody sitting next to me this time, and this is our new awesome state's attorney, Jamie Mosser. So I thought it'd be great to bring Jamie on to talk about a lot of the things we're doing to team up together and work in unison to make public safety greater in Kane County. So I'm going to kind of kick it to Jamie since she's a relatively newly elected official. What, 5 months now?
Yeah, almost 6.
Almost 6 months that she's been in office, and she really hit the ground running, which is what you got to do to be an elected official at the county level, because we call it working politicians, and that, you know, we don't get a whole lot of time to get to events or shake hands and kiss babies. We are constantly plugged in, typically 24/7 in my job, and I'm sure hers too. So Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your mission as our new state's attorney?
So thank you, and thank you for having me on. I'm very excited for this opportunity. So I started in December. It's not my first time being at this office, obviously the first time being the elected state's attorney. I have been a prosecutor for about 12 years beforehand, 10 in Kane County. Really worked a lot in the community, especially with our domestic violence survivors, and making sure that we were treating those cases in the best way possible. The reason why I decided to run ultimately is we need reform. There's no question about it. We need to change the way that we have prosecuted and how we've policed. And frankly, we need to figure out how to get our community and law enforcement back together. And I saw a lot of great possibilities with that. And frankly, having Ron as the sheriff was going to make my job significantly easier with the ideas that I wanted.
And vice versa.
And so the great part about this is that we're working together to make sure that we're changing the system. And a lot of the ideas that I want to bring forth involve getting people to treatment, getting people to resources without necessarily getting them a conviction or putting them in jail or sending them to prison, because we can all admit the war on drugs has failed. Just sending somebody off to prison has failed, because all that we're doing is we're recycling people in our system. And so together we are coming up with a comprehensive plan, a step to see how we can help people. So the first step is creating a pre-arrest diversion program. So the fantastic part about our partnership together is that Ron has taken a portion of his budget and has actually transferred it to my budget so that we can do this. And the idea of pre-arrest diversion is when an officer comes upon a person who's committing a crime, but it's related to addiction issues, mental health issues, lack of resources. Instead of just putting the cuffs on them and taking them off to jail, now what we could do is refer them to services. And the real
don't get scared, folks. We're not talking about like violent offenders.
No.
We're talking about those who are nonviolent, and of course ahead of cashless bail, which we'll get into a little bit here, in the criminal justice reform bill that we'll touch on. But Jamie and I could talk. I think we did talk for about an hour and 15 minutes on that.
What would be an example of that, Ron? Like maybe like a DUI or somebody gets caught with drugs or something? Would that be an example of what we're talking about here?
Yes, drugs is a perfect example. Retail theft. Wow, have we done this before?
Twinsies.
Yeah. So, those are two really good examples. And of course, retail theft, if people aren't familiar with our comfortable lingo, that would be if somebody goes and I almost said forklift. What is it called? When you go into a store and you lift something, what is it called?
You lift something, yeah.
Shoplift. Thank you.
My
God. Yeah, I know.
Out where you were going on that one.
I'm trying to get too much out in a short amount of time. So those would be great examples. And back to Jamie for what we do with those folks after we catch them.
And Jamie, really quick before you continue, if anybody has a question for the sheriff or the state's attorney, just pop it in the questions or in the comment section, and we'll be able to feature that on the screen. And they'll do their best to answer questions, or if you have any comments or anything. So just feel free to type it into the comments on Facebook or on YouTube, and we can get those questions over. But back to you.
The first question is going to be, where'd you get that nice coat, Jamie?
Oh, well, this came from a friend of mine who never went into court, and she said, "Here you go." So
She's like, I shoplifted it.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
I did not
Or
shoplift
forklifting
it or forklift it. So the idea then is for this individual, because here's the problem. The way that I see we as prosecutors have failed is that we've never really partnered in the way that I want to partner with our police officers. Because what happened is somebody committed a crime, their only option was to arrest them. We, as the state's attorney's office, are the ultimate deciders of what cases we go forward with. So now working with them, instead of them having to arrest, we put them through this program. And the whole idea of the program is what's going on in your life right now that is causing you to commit this crime. And it's more than just an addiction. Sometimes it's homelessness, or it's lack of food, not having a job, the mental health issues. Sometimes people are involved in the system with DCFS because of issues that have happened. There's so many things, and they don't necessarily have access to resources. We're going to help get them to it. And it's a wraparound service. It's not just treatment. It's going to be, let's help you find a place to live. Let's help you get a job. Because when you take those stressors out of a person's life, they're more likely to be successful in terms of treatment.
Yeah, and it's very true that so many people come into our system. I touched on this on the show, down 3 pathways. It's mental health, addiction, or lack of opportunity. So that's why employment, vocational training is so important. And not only what we do in the jail for reentry, but also through this pre-arrest diversion program.
Ron, Marianne is asking, so if this includes DUIs, I would assume that would be first-time offenders and not multiple-time offenders. Does that kind of play into when you guys decide to, like, how you guys decide to handle things?
Yeah, we're going to take a lot of the discretion off of our deputies and put it more so on the case managers at the state's attorney's office. So, of course, we're going to consider history in all of this. Of course, we're going to consider the egregiousness of the offense, and we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis. This is not going to be one fell swoop of DUIs, you're eligible. Retail theft, you're eligible. It's going to be person-specific.
But let's also be clear, DUIs will never be pre-arrest diversion because that's dealt with in a whole separate way. What we're talking about is a person who is possessing a controlled substance like cocaine. Again, this is an addiction issue. This is a health issue, not a criminal justice issue. But I want to be very clear on this. We have the way to help people through the criminal justice system that doesn't necessarily result in a conviction or jail or prison. And now I believe Ron has talked a lot about what he has done in his jail, which is unheard of. Look at what our prison system is. They call it the Department of Corrections. There's no corrective behavior that's happening in there. But that's what's happening here, because a person now is getting intense treatment while being in the jail, almost as if they were in a facility somewhere getting the help that they need. Then they're being released with services that we're going to be assisting with so that they have a better chance of not going down the criminal path.
And it's all about making the streets safer. And that's what it does at the end of the day. And if we don't do this kind of activity inside of a correctional center, we are just going to create more victims because 99% of these people are all coming home someday. I see this question here. Should we?
Yeah, this one's from Wendy. It says, is the state's attorney's office going to hire more people, diving into everyone's problems to keep them out of jail? That's going to be a lot of paperwork and follow-up.
Wendy, great point. And that's why we've been working together to collaborate. You ever heard of elected officials or division heads in government sharing budgets? Everybody usually kind of keeps their bucket of money to themselves and hoards it. But it's all about making public safety better in Kane. Look, incarceration doesn't work. Jamie said that. In fact, when I go down to our recovery session groups in the mornings and I listen to the guys talk, it's an accepted pathway in their lives. It's through generations in their family. Their grandfathers went to prison. Their dads went to prison. If they're in prison, oh well, it's part of life. And the whole incarceration theory was built on fear. People should be afraid to be locked up. Well, in the criminal culture, that's not the case. So when we invest in them and we do this collaborative approach to criminal justice, to public safety, that's when we make everyone safer at the end of the day. And we save our taxpayers a boatload of money by not just locking people in a cage and paying $75.
So can I ask you a question on this program? So if someone's arrested, let's say they just, have cocaine in their pocket and they're brought in, and do they, since they're not going to jail, do they go into the program immediately? Is it the type of thing where there are still watchful eyes on them? Or when do they feel that they're free from any prosecution?
So I'll divert to you on that.
So the idea of this is that they're not being arrested. They're not being taken to the jail. From the street, wherever the incident happens, they're going to be given information for our case managers. Our case managers then follow up with them the next day at the latest, essentially. It's all going to depend on when the behavior happens. So yes, there's going to be watchful eyes on them immediately. And what's important to note is these are our low-level, non-violent offenders.
Right.
So these aren't the people who are going out battering individuals, shooting people, doing anything like that. These are people who have a legitimate health issue that we're trying to address now. And to Wendy's point about hiring more officials or more people at the state's attorney's office, I want you to know that if we did the traditional prosecution, arrest, and put it into court, we're just doing all of this here, and it's usually months afterwards, which means we're not getting people the assistance that they need as soon as we can. So what we're going to do is lessen the amount of work that we do here in the criminal court system, which means we need clerks to oversee stuff, security in the jail, or security in the courthouse. We need judges to be there. There's a lot of work that goes into just one case filing. So what we are going to do, though, is do this here in the beginning, get people to services quicker, which means they're likely not to commit future offenses.
Now, here's a question that just came in. Does the person, the offender, have the choice to be a part of this program, or is it decided for them? And that's from Nick.
Completely voluntary. So essentially at the time, the officer is going to say, look, I see that you have this issue. We have a couple of choices. You committed a crime, I can take you off to jail, or you can participate on a voluntary basis in this program. And the idea with the program has a shorter time frame. It's between 3 to 6 months because we don't want to be holding this case over their head forever. The idea is that we're just trying to get them into services, but we will continue to work with them afterwards. So even when we say, okay, we're destroying the evidence, nothing is going to happen with the case, you've completed the program, if they need further services, we're still going to be there to help refer them to it.
And voluntary participation is key because, again, throughout the process, while they're in the program, should they not comply with the directives set out for them by the state's attorney's office, that makes violations relatively easy to make punitive. So, yeah, they're not forced into it. It's got to be an act of compliance.
I think it's important too that people, that we're all learning to understand that you can still support our law enforcement officials and elected officials and also support reform. Or I think that there's people out there that think that there are two different sides there, but you can support some sort of reform here to make everybody's lives easier and to save our citizens money and to help people that need help, but also still support our law enforcement officials and elected officials.
Absolutely. We do it really different here in Kane. And I say this all the time. I said it on the show last week. We're just so fortunate to have the luxury of the professional law enforcement that we do have here in this region of the state. So the criminal justice reform bill, which I'd prefer to stay away from for right now, we're supposed to see the new trailer bill within the next couple of weeks and get a look at what that looks like. And then maybe on a next show, we talk to the specifics of what it will actually look like at the end of the day. But we're disappointed that the state felt it was appropriate to paint with such a broad brush across the state when a lot of the issues that precipitated the bill came out of Cook County, came out of Chicago Police Department. When right here in Kane, we already have all of this tremendous justice reform occurring from the jail to the state's attorney's office. We are setting the trend. So again, stay tuned, folks. Good things to come here in Kane. I keep having to tell our staff, our law enforcement staff and our corrections officers, don't freak out, stay the course, stay strong, because we're not going away, because we do it differently here and we do it for the people.
Tim is wondering if they don't follow the program rules, will the case go forward still?
Yes. So that's part of what is in this agreement that we have them sign, because it's like a contract. They're agreeing to do what we're asking them, and we're agreeing to then obviously dismiss, or not dismiss, but get rid of the case eventually. If somebody goes into the program and just decides that they're not going to do it, then we will file the charges and it will go into the court system.
Does this leave the person with a record if successful going through the program? That's from Suzanne.
No, it doesn't. So the whole point is, again, we're trying to keep this off of their record. And as we know, in this digital world that we live in, when somebody's arrested, even if down the road the case is dismissed, it's still put out there in the media. So-and-so was arrested for retail theft on this day, which means a quick Google search of them reveals all of this. Even if they did everything that they successfully should have done, or frankly, even if the case was dismissed the next day, it's still out there and can't be erased. We're trying to avoid that.
I can't see it working. I mean, I see this system working really well. I always see the stories of, the guy arrested for the 9th time and he's back in jail, but he knows eventually he's going to get out and he's used to the system and he's comfortable in there enough to do it again and again and again. I think this system is brilliant because actually these always problems come from somewhere, individually, personally, and through history of their lives. So to be able to correct those and see those instead of being automatic just to throw them in the jail, I think will be a lot more fortunate for people in the county.
Yeah. I do want to touch on cashless bail because that's going to be part of the inevitable portion of the bill. And we're proponents of cashless bail. We see a great deal of racial disparity in our own jail. The Black population in the jail has been as high as 46%. While I've been sheriff, it hovers around 35%, while it's 6% in the community. A lot of that stems from what really I wish the media would focus on when it comes to the criminal justice reform bill, and that's social economic issues. That there are 3 other pillars to this criminal justice reform bill that nobody ever talks about: the educational portion, the socioeconomic portion, and the employment portion. So those are the real key points that society should be focusing on, because we're in this position that people are having more contact with criminal justice, with police, because of those lack of opportunities, because of cultures that they've been stuck in due to those societal issues. So really, in my interpretation, especially here in Kane County, it's not the fault of police that contact is higher, it's a societal issue. So I say all that to say this: as I look in our jail and we have people now going through our structured program, we have a gentleman, a Black man from Aurora. His name is Rick Swain. And he was in our Lighthouse Recovery Program in the jail for 13 months-ish, 14 months. And he called himself the Lighthouse General because he became kind of the leader of the group. You see these guys, yeah, they do group counseling sessions with Lighthouse Recovery, but then they go out in the cell block area and they hold their own group sessions together at night out of their own initiative. So it's really impressive that the entire environment is very supportive down in Recovery Pod. It's not like a jail cell block. So Rick was sitting on a $750,000 bond, $750,000 for possessing 3 grams of heroin. Okay. And that high bond was a result of drug charges back in the 90s. He was also, if convicted, looking at natural life in prison because of those charges from the 90s and this new charge. Because of his performance, because we were able to secure him full-time employment on the outside, because the sheriff's office now runs electronic monitoring out of our agency, and because Lighthouse does reentry and continues his group counseling at no cost to him, the state's attorney's office agreed, number one, this is historic and unheard of, eliminate his bond. The judge agreed with this also, the most important key. Yes. Eliminate his bond, that $750,000 bond, to 0, put an ankle bracelet on him, let him walk out the door and straight into work. So right now, folks, it's been a little over a month that he's been positively performing out in the community, working every single day, checking in with his scheduled group counseling, doing everything that's been asked of him. And of course, as this continues for the next 6, 9, 12 months, whatever the state's attorney's office deems appropriate, she's willing to either reduce his charges or give him a probationable offense so he can continue on his path of life. So literally, we've given him the opportunity to save his life. Literally, this program is saving his life, because otherwise he would have been in a box for the rest of it if it wasn't here. So we're looking to expand this over the next few weeks. This is a lot of work on State's Attorney Mosser's part. So, Lighthouse can make a recommendation on somebody in the program. I can make a recommendation along with Lighthouse, but then she's got to do all the work. So why don't you tell us a little bit about all that checkoff work that you do before you even consider somebody eligible?
Jamie, before you hit that, there's the question too, and I was wondering this too. So how would you guys, and I think that this program is great, but Wendy's wondering, how would you avoid people taking advantage of it? Like to stop repeat offenders that would constantly take advantage of a program like the one that we were talking about before?
So first of all, I think that Wendy and I need to meet because she has these fantastic questions. And these are the things that I'm trying to get out to the community. And she's right. Yeah, people are going to take advantage of this. There's no question about it. But that's why we then file the charges afterwards. And the idea, again, is this tiered step in terms of looking at people as individuals and not just as criminals or a crime. That's what we're trying to do. So the first step is this pre-arrest diversion program. And people are either going to take advantage of this and they're going to do well on it and we're never going to see them again. People are not going to. We're going to file charges. Every case is going to be different, but we have to try. And that's the biggest thing. what I believe fully is that Ron and I are going to create all these great programs. They're going to do wonderful or they're going to fail. And if they fail, we're going to do something better the next time. So after the pre-arrest diversion, if somebody's arrested for a case, we're expanding our diversion programs because, again, the whole idea with this is to try to give people an opportunity to go down a different path. We can give them that opportunity. This program that Ron is talking about, this is for the people who their next step is prison, and there's no question about it. And Mr. Swain's next step was prison. For life. And so I want to point out that when he did his crimes in the 90s, that's when the war on drugs was huge. And he went to prison both times. And then there was a period of time where he either wasn't using or he was using, but wasn't involved in the criminal justice system. But there was a significant period of time from his crime in the 90s till what happened now. And one of the best things that probably ever happened to Mr. Swain was COVID, because he was forced, court wasn't going on. We weren't resolving any cases because we were shut down. He took advantage in the right way of this Lighthouse program and then taught other people, knowing that his next step was prison. So his whole motivation behind this was to make his life better and to make other people's lives better without getting anything out of it, which is, not being able to do that. Tim Baker, no way. I'm not, no. I thank you for the offer, but no. So the great thing about this is what I do, I look at every single case and I talk to the prosecutor who's in charge of the case. And so we just look at that in general to see how they're doing. And I take a lot of stock in what Ron and Nate Lantham, who is the owner and genius behind Lighthouse Recovery, does. And I look at all of that and we talk about it. Our next step then is to talk to the officers who are involved in the case because they know this case and they should have a say in what happens. If there happens to be a victim in the case, depending on what type of case it is, then we talk to that individual as well because we want to make sure that they're on board with everything. Once we get all of that done, then we go to the next step, which is making sure that they do have the job, that the EHM is ready, that we have all of this in place. Then we go with the defense attorney and we file a motion in front of the judge, and the state's attorney's office argues to have this person released. And so I called Ron as my witness.
This is all while I just put my feet up on the table and watch.
This is typical, actually. So we do this together, and he was my witness as to why we should release this person. I work for a department nameless to have the state's. Oh yes. Yeah. This is an example of what Kane County government's like. I mean, we collaborate across the board with everybody. We have an awesome chief judge. Our county board is incredible. I mean, you don't hear elected officials, sheriffs, state's attorneys talking about this anywhere else. So we're very fortunate. And guys, like I said, before we got started, you put a microphone in front of two politicians' faces and it's 23 minutes into it. So we'll let you guide where we go from here if we go at all.
Is there anything that we're missing that we think is important for this round? Because we're going to do these often, once a month at least. And is there anything for this month that you guys think we're missing? I feel like people have a solid understanding of what we're kind of talking about and the ideas. I'm not going to feature some of the comments.
Why?
They're all positive about you guys, but then they're comparing you guys to other people.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So we'll just go with that. But what are we missing?
Is anyone saying I look taller? Because that would be amazing.
I'm dramatically taller than you are. No, I think, Danielle, this is a great foundation layer. And then we can go upwards from here and kind of give monthly updates on new stuff and then talk about monthly topics that are relevant to each month. So, yeah.
Well, you guys, I mean, I got dogs barking back here, but you guys are really hope seekers. And I think it's good because and until you realize where a person's coming from, I just think it's a great idea to at least give them that opportunity to change their lives and the services that will work for them if they're willing to, give their time and, really take full responsibility for their success in it.
I think Jameson brings up a good point. Do programs like this, the ones that we've been talking about, make it easier to focus your resources on violent crimes then?
Yes.
So first I'm going to point out that's my husband. That.
I didn't even notice that. I should have picked up on James.
And that's my good-looking son in the picture also.
Well, then I'll let you field the answer.
So actually, it does make it so much easier because we spend a significant amount of our resources just focusing on these issues that deal with mental health or drug addiction or lack of resources. I mean, we've prosecuted so many cases that just deal with this instead of being able to focus on the cases that we have to give our focus to, the sex offenses, the crimes against children, the murders. These are the ones that I want, and I know our police and our prosecutors want to make sure we give our full attention to, because those are the individuals we need to protect our community from. These other individuals, we just need to help them. And the criminal justice system can do that. We can help them get resources and treatment.
And it gives me more beds for those violent offenders. And of course, we have
Right.
programs for them as well.
Mhm.
They're not as luxurious as like the Lighthouse program or, vocational or job fairs that we hold in the jail. They're more like get yourself right kind of programs.
Right. Exactly.
And mentorship.
And the biggest thing that I want people to start talking about is, unfortunately, we've turned into a very negative society where anything that anybody tries is the worst possible idea.
It's change.
I know. And
It's
every
very-
time we talk about giving people a chance who have committed a crime, all they see is criminal.
Mhm.
So many of these individuals come up with trauma in their lives. There's this whole theory behind adverse childhood experiences where they've seen a parent go to jail or prison. They've seen abuse. They've been abused. There's a divorce that happens. So many things that affect kids that eventually we see them in our system. I can tell you that Ron could probably go to the jail now and identify probably all of the people in there who have some sort of trauma in their background.
And there's one common theme. This trauma at a very young age drove them. I mean,
Mhm.
literally throughout the jail, male and women, all 400 of them, if we pulled them right now, started dealing and using drugs between 10 and 13 years old. So that's about the time frame that they all entered the criminal culture.
I think about it too, like when I compare myself now to how I was in my 20s, and I might have made some not great choices when I was younger, and to think that that could affect my entire life just for, it was never any violent crime or anything like that, but people are dumb when they're young. And
So Danielle, you're not the same person you were in the 90s, like Mr. Swain. You may have improved.
I'm like hesitant to start admitting things. All of a sudden there's going to be a knock at my door, but you know what I mean? Like,
I know where you live too. So
you do know where I live. A lot of us make stupid choices when we're younger, and to think that could affect the rest of your life. But having programs like this to help people through it is fantastic.
that's why we're
Well,
here.
and I think people are going to see the changes. They can judge it beforehand, but when you're dealing with a person and you treat them as a person and they have the respect factor going for them, and maybe that's their first opportunity. Someone's given them hope and a way to change. So we'll see what happens there. But I know it'll be positive.
Yeah, we've gotten statewide and national attention on our programming. So now it's just the fact, hey, people, will you actually plug it in? That remains to be seen, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Before we wrap up with the sheriff and the state's attorney, if people wanted to take this offline, is there a way that people can directly contact you guys? Like Wendy seems to have some really great questions for maybe you, Jamie, or if anybody want to reach out to Ron, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, I'm really accessible personally. So if you go to the sheriff's office website, canesheriff.com, and just click on the sheriff link, goes to my page, my phone number, my email address is up there, and I try to answer everybody within 24 hours. So you can find me there. Jamie?
So we're redoing our whole website and our Facebook, so it looks not great right now, but if you go on there, there is the means of contacting me, and I do speak with as many people as possible. And I really encourage Wendy to reach out to me, because these are the questions that we want people to understand, because there's so much misinformation about this program. And I think she's nailing it in terms of the program. So,
And Danielle being a rebel.
and
But
Danielle
also, if you
being a
want
rebel.
to email questions for Jamie to me, I'm more than happy to forward them.
Also, I mean, my email is very easy. It's mosserjamie@co.kane.il.us. So I love talking to people, obviously. So the more that we can get this conversation started, the more I'm involved and invested in all of this.
I don't find 3-dot emails very easy, but it was, fairly simple.
All right. Well, Sheriff Hain, State's Attorney Mosser, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great way to kind of launch these virtual chats, and we look forward to many more in the future.
All right. We'll see
Thank
y'all
you.
soon. Take care.
Thank you.